babes. Is it working for you? Yay! I think it's working. I'm going to wait a second. Let me know if you can hear me. Hi, Paige. Hi, Paul. Hi, Penny. Hi, Abby. Oh, you can hear me? Beautiful. So, hi. I'm so excited. My hand is being weird right now. It's being very shaky. So I have to, there's been so many times I try to put a glass in my mouth and it's just my body on the right side. Sorry. But we're going to get into magic, but I just have to warn you about this wild hand on the right side right now. Yay. Oh, so good to see you guys. It took me a second to remember how to do this. I think while we're waiting for people to get on, welcome to your first live, sweetheart. Hi, Emma. I feel like we're all about to party together. Okay. Whoo! I'm like, do I still know how to talk? Can I do this? I just think it's time. It's time. I had to wait for those eclipses to be over. I'm a firm believer as a healer that when you're going through your own healing, I don't think there's just one dark night of the soul, you know? I think we pop out of the dark night of the soul and we get on wild timelines and then it sucks us back in. And I think when you're sucked back into the underworld, at least for me, it's only appropriate for me to get very still and very quiet with myself. And literally, I think there's so much magic with going underground. I remember Rosie told me, I didn't know I was getting sick at first. And I remember Rosie told me, Lacey, I just have this urge or this feeling that we're supposed to go out into the woods and bury you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she told me how, like, the elder witches around there, and there have been people on her land who, when they're going through a sort of death process of their own, that they've been buried there and they'll spend the night in the dirt. And I'm just not that hardcore. So instead, I'm in Bree's basement. And I'm very excited to just kind of share some of the magic that's been coming up. And I really want to see and hear how you guys are doing. So at any point, feel free to ask questions, share any downloads, share any emotion you're feeling, or kind of energetically what you've been going through. Someone got me this oracle book, and I just want to read a little out of it. It's a deck. And I picked a card for tonight, and I got Hag of the North Mountain. And it said, those who were born to Earth's rough places, who seek out craggy landscapes, snow-streaked elevations, and raging seas, feel a particular kinship with this wild planet. To them, to you, resilience does not mean a hardened heart. Resilience does not mean a hardened heart, an unforgiving nature. Resilience is the maintenance of sovereignty and recovery of selfhood. Resilience is the maintenance of sovereignty and selfhood. There's been a lot of self-judgment of having to be resilient again, of having to come out from the rubble again. And especially when you think you've like manifested your life, you know, I created this. I used magic. I'm a witch. And then this energy of, oh, fuck, I have to die again. I have to be resilient again. And what I heard my guide say really loudly the other night is, why do you feel entitled to health, Lacey? Why do you feel entitled to not suffering while you're here? And I remember the episode Magic Numbers on Horapod with Doe. And she talked about numerology and how I'm the 7, and that a lot of my life will be my feet at the fire, experiencing death and teaching myself from that place. And then there's this hope, like when we teach ourselves, that there's a ripple effect. I go back and forth between wanting to create beautiful meaning and wanting to just exist in the moment. But tonight, we're going to create beautiful meaning because it's fucking Paige's birthday. Oh! I think birthdays are so important. And I know there's like adults who are like, we don't have to celebrate our birthday now. But birthday is one of the first rituals we learn about in this life. And everything is magic and everything is ritual. It's just how much do we get to step in to our own magic, or step into our own rituals, or the rituals being conducted externally from us. Am I feeling on the upswing? I posted this poem today that Andrea Gibson is a queer poet from Boulder, Colorado. She's actually from the East Coast, but primarily when they started their career, Andrea Gibson was in the Boulder area. And I was coming up as a little kid poet when Andrea was at all the coffee shops and the colleges and the schools. So Andrea Gibson was my first introduction to slam poetry, and I got to learn from her classes and her workshops. And some of her best friends, they were like this queer group of professors and poets, and they were my professors. And I even got to take a class in college about the goddess and learning how we've shoved out the goddess in everyday society. But the reason I'm blabbing about Andrea Gibson is that they wrote a poem today because Andrea Gibson, sometimes I'm like, did I just manifest all of this as a little kid? Because I would go to Andrea Gibson's poetry nights and they would speak these like horrifically painful poems about Lyme disease. And I remember sitting in the audience and being like, what the fuck is that? And feeling the tragedy of their pain, of Andrea's pain, kind of seeping into the audience. And seeing one time Andrea was so sick from Lyme disease that their friends had to carry Andrea on stage to perform. And she like couldn't lift their neck up. And they came out with this poem today, and it says, it's talking about Andrea's sickness and how someone was asking, is Andrea out of the woods? Is Andrea out of the woods? Is she better yet? And that their partner had to say, she won't ever be out of the woods. She might stay in those woods. And we can't feel bad that Andrea is in the woods. Some people come to search through the forest. Some people come to dig in the rubble, in the darkness. And we don't know what is good or bad. But that doesn't mean we don't hold space for their pain while they're in the forest. It's a really interesting thing with spirituality, because I feel like so much of it, I think a lot of spiritualists are teaching us right now that there is no such thing as good and bad. So we think there's no such thing as good and bad, and if you have a certain circumstance, you created it. And that might be true, and I don't fully know. But what I do know is no matter what circumstance someone is going through or whether they created it or not, that timeline deserves honor. It deserves respect. And if you have that space to be a healer for someone in a dark timeline or a friend to someone in a dark timeline, I kind of think that's why we're here. I didn't plan to say any of that, but I want to get into the wildness of all of this. The superpowers that have come up. Also, I think I should say trigger warning right now because it is HorrorPod and we might start talking about the sex and there might be some triggering shit in there. And we love you, Paige, and we're happy you're here, Ian. Okay. So I think I've been sick for a long time, but there was this energy when I was younger of my family are iron workers. And when you are a witch, you cultivate each element. So wind, earth, fire, water, metal, iron, steel. And I might have said this before, but steel and metal and iron, that's a very karmic energy, and it absorbs a lot of energy. It can be protective, but it also can be very destructive and spell depending on how you use it. And I keep going to the doctors and they're like, your iron is really high, your iron is really high. And if you remember last summer, that's when I first started feeling like something was eating my brain. And it was when I was in New York City and I was having the time of my life. And then all of a sudden I couldn't sleep anymore. And I went to the hospital and they said that my brain had lost the ability to fall asleep. And it's literally because parasites were in there eating my brain. That is so crazy. And they got into my brain when I started a podcast and said, parasites are members of the Matrix. Now, did I manifest that because that's what I was speaking into existence? Or was it a psychic feeling that I was absorbing and observing? I don't know. But I started experiencing that. And then I just kept pushing forward. And I didn't want to acknowledge the truth that I had to slow down and stop. And I keep having this image of me being a little kid. And look at me. I don't scream athlete. You know what I mean? I don't scream like sports player, but for some reason my mom went through a period of wanting to show up as a mother, and her way of doing that was aggressively putting me into sports and like hollering from the sidelines. And although I didn't have the coordination, I had the grit. So my brother talks about this moment where a basketball hit me in the face when I was 8 years old. And I ran down the court with my whole face bleeding. And I remember looking into the stands and everyone was cheering for me. And I was like, this is my fucking moment. This is my moment. And everyone said, Lacey, you're so tough. You're so strong. And I learned to keep pushing even though I was bleeding. I learned that I had to, the only way to come up on top was to come up bloody and bruised. I'm very short. I'm a dwarf. I couldn't make a basket, but I could keep going after being punched in the face. And my whole life has been a series of, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna use magic and I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. There's this ritual, there's this self-help book, there's this thing, and I'm going to be okay. But when you do that, when you have that constant messaging of what can I fix in me, How can I be better? How can I be different than my lineage or my family? There's also this subconscious messaging of I'm not okay right now. You know, and I didn't know that I was telling myself that. And I'm not like blaming myself for being sick, but it's more of an acknowledgement of the interweaving, the patterns. And last year, when I did the Exist episode, I heard really loudly that I am my ancestors and that I have to stop pretending that I'm better than them and that this is all ancestor work. And I said that on a podcast and I did a couple of rituals and then I was like, we're good, right? And then I got really sick. I was also delivering babies and like lifting bales of hay at a farm. So it was like pretty intense and doing this and readings. But I felt like I was in my prime. I felt the strength. And my question to you guys is, how many times do you keep pushing yourself when your nose is bleeding and you're running down the court because the audience is watching you? Because you want someone to cheer you on. And you think the only way you could be cheered on is if you ignore your pain, if you just keep running. Does that make sense? Does that resonate at all? I thought my worth came from my strength. But when you have this programming that your worth comes from your strength, then timelines keep showing up that allow you to prove your strength. And part of this, as I'm speaking this isn't even what I planned to talk about. This is just what's coming out of me right now. But part of me, as I'm saying this, I don't like it because I don't want anyone to feel like I just don't want anyone to blame themselves if they're in a hard timeline right now or in a hard position at the moment. But it's this constant message of I got this. And the truth is right now, even still, I don't have it. So I don't know who asked if I was out of the woods or on the upswing. Thank you for asking. And in a sense, I am, because I can be here right now. A lot of the time I would open my computer and I couldn't see the computer. Right now it's just kind of out of this eye, and this side of my body locks up sometimes. Sometimes I can't walk, but really every day it's different. So yes, I'm on the upswing and I'll gladly speak that into existence. But also I don't want to be like lying to you with my nose bloody. You know what I mean? So I want to be like truthful to you, Emma. I don't fucking know. I don't know. All I know right now is that I've been flying through this earth. As you guys know, I've had a million different jobs. I love jumping on timelines. I love being adventurous. Magic has always just been my motherfucking go-to. This is my Glock. My magic is like my Glock, my protection, my thing I turn to, my most reliable source, right? But in a way, that hasn't created a lot of safety and protection for me. So now I'm treating myself more like a baby, and I have to have some energetic bubble wrap around me, which I don't fucking like, because I like to, kind of my thing is to show up at every table, because I'm dealing with this old story that I don't deserve a seat at the table, so I make a fucking seat for myself at the table with magic. And I don't care if it ruffles feathers or what happens, and it's all kind of part of this grand story. And now the universe is like, no, if you do that, you're done. If you don't get to just go to a farm and then go out of the country or get any job, work at a strip club that's dangerous. Like, you don't get that right now. And it is a reversal of timelines. It's going back in time. and holding myself like I fucking talk about all the time. As of late, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I don't know what that means. I'm learning every day how much I've trained myself to ignore my discomfort and push through in order to seem normal and get validation. Yeah, when I was in Nashville with Jess, I was like, "What's up, dog?" And she was just kind of like, "Hey." But there was such an urge to be not sick around her, you know? And not because of anything about her, but it's just like, I don't want to be sick around my friends. And then people are like, "Well, you don't look or seem sick." Which is also, weird to say because it's like in my brain. So like, how would that look? But then there was this moment where I was like, I can't hold up a strong front. A lot of birth work is holding a strong front while you're tending the person. And now I have to surrender to the puddle, to the fluidity, to the softness. Thank you for sharing that, Emma. And thank you guys for the comments. It helps me. Like, even doing, yeah, I won't say that right now. Thank you, Blitzwolf, for saying that. But don't be sorry for me. Please. Please only envision me with light, with health, with magic, with sexuality, with HorrorPod. Like, when all these podcasts started, I think there was a collective upgrade, a collective energetic upgrade of realizing we have a body, because the Matrix had disconnected us so much from the neck down. So, like, I think part of the pandemic and all of that shit was realizing, oh, this is my body. What do I choose for my body? Also, whatever you guys choose for your body is 100% accepted here. That is like, if I have any belief in this world, it's of autonomy of other people's choices with their body. But I want to say very clearly, because I've got a lot of DMs, I am not sick because of any sort of vaccine. Okay? Promise. I didn't get it. And I don't say that publicly usually, because it's really important for me that no one's influenced of what to do with their body because of what I do with my body. So I never spoke about that specifically, but that is not what happened to me, because I didn't, yeah. Kind of feel weird saying that, because I also think like your body is your business, and a lot of people have been DMing me asking me that, but I know it's out of love and concern. But I also want to be clear, that's not why. But I do believe we are all being poisoned. But I'm going to do a poison episode with Rosie, because Rosie loves poison. Whether it's poisonous plants, herbs, poison in the environment, poison in relationship, poison is always an opportunity for magic. Like, there's always ways we can use poison to our greatest good. So even if we are being poisoned from this external power, there's a way to harness that and create a new timeline. But I think it's really important that, but also I want to honor people's feelings. So I don't want to be like, don't be sorry for me, Blitzwolf, don't have sadness, because I have done that in this process. Like, my brother was showing emotion and I was like, no, you can have emotion, but I can't hold that emotion right now. And I don't want that emotion right now, because the poem Andrea Gibson wrote today speaks to me so much. I put it on my Instagram story. I'll post it here. But they said, like, thank God for your failings. We don't know. When we're in it, this could be the greatest fucking thing that ever happened to me. And do I cry some days? fucking of course. Is it lonely? Most certainly. I've missed you guys so much. I've missed creating art. I've had the scariest fears run through my brain. But I'm not depressed. And I think I'm less anxious than I ever have been. This is giving me an opportunity to learn by digging the hole and sitting in it. And it's you guys have helped me receive. Britt, if Britt's on here, Britt just sent this to me recently, and I haven't even had a chance to thank her. It's a turquoise wolf, and she sent me this beautiful wand she made from her tree, and she sent me a statue of the Morgan from the underworld. Autism and ADHD, that's so big, and I have so many thoughts about this right now, and I have lots of friends, and they're recently finding out that a lot of their kids are on the spectrum and have ADHD. And I want conversations with people experiencing this right now, because I think it's part of like an upgrade, and I think it's part of the poison, and I think it's part of the magic, but I also don't know, but hear that it comes with so much pain too, and that pain is very big and real. The Blitzwolf says fair about the bubble wrap. The world feels quite intense and scary under the surface, and it's a lot of us sensitive peeps. Man, this energy is a lot. Thank you, Blitzwolf, for saying how you're feeling in this right now. Because honestly, if I'm honest, I feel like a little bitch. I'm like, I had to manifest being sick and being on the couch while this was happening. But okay, I feel like I'm rambling a little, but I want to be in it, and I see Rosie so in it. And I believe we're in a spiritual warfare, but I don't think war is what we've been taught, where it's necessarily a physical battle with weapons. I think this is a spiritual battle. I think spiritual battles can be fought with love and with pain. And if I was a warrior right now, I'd be a warrior in the birth room. And I wonder why I'm being so strongly taken out of it. I talked on the episode with Jess of feeling locked in. And I didn't like how I talked about it, because it sounded like I just had some FOMO, And there is an element of FOMO, but there's a bigger element of feeling this energy of, sometimes I feel like there's a claw and it comes down and just throws me on these different timelines. And sometimes between timelines, I'm meant to go inside so deep. And no matter what I do, the universe will not let me out. Emma says, lots of sensory sensitivities that I have learned to ignore, leading to chronic disassociation. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I feel like around the pandemic, we started healing the disassociation part as a collective and feeling into our own bodies. But I feel like that was a 3-year cycle. Now we're in 2023. And I think a lot of right now is realizing not only do we have a body and we feel our body, but I think we're all learning that we feel and affect each other's bodies on a psychic level. And I think the collective is going to just like massively wake up to the fact that they are feeling into each other's bodies. Does that make sense? That you're feeling into each other's bodies. There's also a thing that the magic I do is feeling and going into people's bodies. Not going in like a possession sort of thing, but like I just feel it in me. And when I worked at the strip club, I think it started with my mom and her extreme pain and her extreme sorrow. I knew I was a healer as a little kid because I could sponge her demons and I could become a home for my mother's demons. And then I started becoming a home for the demons of the people who were sexually abusing me. And then I worked at the strip club and realized that there were a lot of sex workers who were way younger than me that came from extreme trauma as well. And I consented to sucking and absorbing some of their demons. And part of this sickness, part of parasites. Dang it, I feel bad right now because I feel like I'm just rambling and not telling you guys the magic. Let's see what you're saying. But I do want to say that part of parasites is this energy. For me, I tripped one night, not on actual mushrooms, but I got my body to a state where I felt like I was seeing multiple timelines and multiple spirits. And my guides came in and they told me that something about me having parasites had to do with the energy of memory. And collectively, we're remembering right now. And part of remembering is remembering, oh, we have a body. Part of remembering is, oh, I feel your body. And this energy of holes, when I was kind of tripping out that night, I saw people being able to see the holes in each other, and that we feel the holes in each other in such an extreme way. And on a scientific level, even having someone different come into the room, automatically your hormones change, your nervous system changes. They talk about how trees have roots and communicate with each other. So do we. But we just haven't been taught that. No one is above you on a psychic level. You can read and feel bodies, and you already are the same way I do. Maybe not the exact same way, but similar. And that's why we'll be around certain people and our shoulders will be up, or we'll feel stiffer, our jaws will be locked, or we'll just feel looser or more giggly. Why people sync their periods together. We aren't separate from each other. But we had to kind of realize our individual magic before I think we could totally lock in this energy of feeling collectively each other's bodies. Yeah. I'm careful about what I say because I have empathy for everyone, and I think I can't say that I chose not to, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't good for someone else. I don't know what's good for another being, and I don't have medical advice. You know what I mean? The peacock eats the poison. Fuck yes, Abby. Ow! Oh, bye, Emma. How is that going for you, Rhonda? Do you see magic in it? Is it part of a collective upgrade? Is it part of the poison? Is it all of it? I've been pulling 10 of Swords a lot lately and thought it was like a melodrama card. Like 10 of Swords, that's a bit much, girl. Get it together. And then my friend said something to me like, to her it seemed more like, nah, he's not dead. This is literally how many swords it took to pin you down. Oh! Woo! Woo, saw. That just spoke to me. And the whole time during this, I've been pulling the 10 of Swords. That's how many swords it took to pin you down, to get you to rest, to be still and be hurt. Yeah, I didn't stop during the whole, like when everyone's like, it was so nice having a break and we shut down. Since I was conceived, I have not stopped. And it did take me 10 swords to stop. And to be honest, I still don't know if I've really stopped. God, you guys are fucking, I love ya. These human bodies were not designed to take on the levels of energies going on out there. Yeah, these bodies are caught in the energetic riptide of the spiritual war and its raging sea. You guys are motherfucking poets. Can we do a poetry open mic? I talked to Ian, and Ian wants to lead one, and maybe we can do just a regular open mic soon where you guys can come on screen and we can all share. Wow. Do you think that everything with ADHD and autism is new, or do you think we didn't have a language for it before and we're really just seeing each other better right now? And part of seeing each other better is sort of not pathologizing, but like identifying, oh, this is what you're experiencing. I think it's beautiful. This has been one of the hardest years of my life. A lot of death and illness and trauma and violence, all while being so hard on myself to be an artist and a conduit of the spirit while my body is breaking down. Some people are here to dig in darkness, and everything you said really resonates. An aversion to letting myself break down and rest. Saw. Big love to you, Saw. I just felt like pulling a card for you. It's the Talesman. Marcella Kroll's deck, the Talesman. I don't know. I feel like you're supposed to make a Talesman, so. A key. You're unlocking something. I feel like something is opening for you. Also, just like thank you for acknowledging, like everything you're saying, everything you're all saying is very helpful to me. And I just appreciate you guys being vulnerable right now. And I really appreciate how you've been writing this out, Saw. So no one should be hard on themselves for feeling like shit. This is hard and hectic or exhausting. Yeah. And so when I met Jessa, I also met Water Baby, and we had a gathering and we did a lot of acid, and and I like saw the world shutting down, and I saw all of us gathering, and I was like, oh my God, Jessa, you're gonna wake up so many people, and we're all gonna come together, and we can live in community together. And I don't know, she's just like, slow down, dog. Or a lot of people were like, slow down, dog. But to me, it's like what I had sensed since I was little. Like I just knew I was gonna find you guys, and I just knew I was gonna find Jessa and like the friends I have now. I just was sure of it since I was little. I saw them, I saw them in the sky before I met them. And one of the things I saw also was at that time I was making pretty good money at the club, and I could buy a house. And I had I've never had a house in my life. I have this memory of going from house to house with my mom when I was little. And she had this friend, Stephanie, and Stephanie had 2 kids, and they had us one night sleeping on like floaties you take to the pool. And I remember there was like cereal crumbs in those floaties that we were using as beds, and I was starving. So I was like picking through the floaties to get food. And in that moment, I was very little, and I was like, I'm going to have a house one day. I'm going to have a house. But there's like all this karmic stuff around house and home and metal in my lineage. But back to the iron. Rosie says there's a lot of iron in my blood because it's like literally like my blood, my lineage have always been iron workers. And that comes with like karmic shit and even some darkness that I think I'm supposed to work through. Why the fuck was I just telling you all that? I was so excited. Oh, I could buy a house. And I wanted to. But when I was with them in Sedona doing the acid, my guides were like, you don't get a house. You don't get a house. And quit identifying with money or worrying about money or manifesting money or not manifesting money. Like, you're a 7, leave that to the 8s, leave that to other people. That's not your shit, bitch. You're a witch. And my guide showed me very strongly that I was going to be put in strange timelines to immerse in other people's homes. Because I was like, because part of my magic, or I would say the biggest part of my magic, is being able to see other people's magic, being able to see other people's superpowers, being able to help, be a mirror for people's purpose. And my guides were like, you're literally just going to go live in the homes of others. And I was like, that's weird. It's weird. And I feel like as a witch, you want to create your own space. And my nervous system is fucked from what I've experienced. So just dropping into other houses is fucking, ugh. But it's been happening since 2019. And I lived with Jessa. I lived with Rosie. I lived with a bunch of people in Taos, New Mexico. I went and stayed with a family who was going to give birth, and I just helped take care of them. And then Sam kept telling me in LA to come stay with them, and that's where I got sick, and I couldn't walk or see. So I had to be very, very intimate with them in this very small house in Hollywood with a new baby, a husband and wife, and me sick as fuck. And I saw so much magic in that. Never would they choose that scenario. Would I choose that scenario? And I got to see and experience love in a way I never saw before. And I want to hold on to that love, like how we want to hold on to a butterfly and then it like dies. But my guides told me when I met Jessa and everyone that I'm kind of going to be living with all these people I'm meeting, all these magic beings, and I'm not going to have much of a say in it. And that when I'm there, I'm like to be a sort of doula. But that doesn't make sense for when I was with Sam and Eric because I was deathly ill and not doulaing them at all. But sometimes our higher self chooses what we can't see. And I feel like my higher self is like learning about home by being pushed into other people's homes. And I'm a projector, so I always have to get invited. And staying in Bree's home right now is something I would have not chose. And not because of anything about anybody, but it's in a suburb of the city, but really close to the city. There's a busy street right outside. I was in the mountains, and I would have never guessed that it would be so harmonious. I met Bree when we were struggling as waitresses, and I was in college, and she was pregnant, and I was like, and she needed a friend, and I was like, I'll be your friend. I know about pregnancy. And she had the baby, and it was really hard for her, and she was in an abusive situation. And I went and stayed with her when she was in a very abusive situation. And I held her baby, and I watched her baby. And now the baby is 11, and he's upstairs. And he's like, who is this witch who's sick? I'm sure it's hard for like a 10, 11-year-old to like really comprehend what sick means when someone's just can't move and they're just laying in your basement. But he went to school the other day, and I don't know, I know there's a lot of dark stuff happening in the world, but there's a lot of beauty too. Because even in elementary schools right now, public elementary schools, they're learning about energy and magic in a way that was never talked about when I was in school. And when he went to school, they were having a crystal fair where they were learning about different crystals and geology. And to raise money for the school, they were also selling crystals. And he saved up money and he went and bought me this citrine little crystal that said health on it. And he gave it to me, and I was like, this is so magic. Maybe I don't get to be big and colorful and be in New York City right now. Maybe some days I can't walk. But right now, I'm with this like 10-year-old who's going to remember these moments when he's older of how there was a witch in the basement. And him and I sat and talked about manifesting. And after he brought the crystals home, it was the new moon, and we made new moon candles. And I'm just saying that to say is like, we don't know that our darkness in the moment, it's not to cover up the pain and it's not to be love and light about it, but we just don't know if the universe is rigged in our favor, even when we're experiencing the worst fucking shit of our life. And I got the term the universe being rigged in our favor because I can't figure out Bree's magic totally. Because in a lot of ways, she's very different than like the rugged witches I grew up with or the queer poets I grew up around. She likes sports. She likes going to a good baseball game and a football game. She likes having a drink at the dive bar. And she doesn't watch the news. And she doesn't want to talk politics. And I think I used to be a little hard on her about that. Like, come on, Bree, there's so much happening in the world. Come on. Like, you got to do this and do that. And like, I'm just always like very passionate. And I have this like instinct to get people on my side, whatever that side is. It's part of my shadow of like, come on, let's go. My Aries moon, let's gear up. And Bree, I like started doing a channeling on her, even though I'm not supposed to really be channeling people right now. And I say not supposed to just because until I figure out my own body, I don't really want to tap into other people's bodies. You know what I mean? So, but I was doing a little channeling with her, and I'm like, oh, Bree's magic is she knows how to shut off channels. And she finds a few channels that are aligned with her soul, aligned with her joy, aligned with her sun. And she can fucking shut off all those other channels and tune in to one that she can receive from. She knows how to receive, but she also really knows how to give. So I was tapping into her magic and I was like, oh, Bree's magic is she literally always thinks the universe is rigged in her favor. She believes the universe is rigged in her favor. It does not matter what this girl is going through. She's like, yeah. I don't want to air someone else's laundry, but what she went through when her son was a baby was extreme. And I've seen people lose their life in those kind of situations and lose everything. And she's very self-sufficient, self-made. And even then, when we were very young, she was like, I'm going to be okay. And she shut off every other channel and focused in the channel of her baby and the channel of herself. And I watch her manifest money and housing and jobs and opportunity, and she lights up the room. But she lights up this room with this belief that's constantly going through her that the universe is rigged in her favor. Me, I'm searching for the shadows, the meaning, the art, the holding of hands. And I've always kind of been a little like, when people are like, the universe has my back and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but, and what about the people who the universe doesn't have their back right now? Did they do something wrong? But in a way, Bree doesn't go that deep about it, which is such a beautiful gift to me right now. So you can get a lot of whoa, I hope I'm not showing my vagina right now. I'm wearing a dress without underwear. But speaking of my vagina, so this isn't medical advice, and I'm not a doctor, and I don't actually know anything. So remember that always, and trust yourself. But a lot of diseases connected to parasites, like diseases that we aren't taught that there's any correlation to, are connected to parasites. And we can get parasites through kissing, through sex, through the air, through our feet, through our food. But I think I'm going to do an updated parasite episode, so I don't want to go too far off on the parasite tangent. But I think you have to be at a certain frequency. And again, frequencies aren't good or bad. But you have to be at a certain frequency for like literally, when I say frequency, we're electric bodies. That's one thing. When I couldn't move and I had a fever and my whole body was swollen and I couldn't see, sometimes we can't see because we have to see in and out, or up, and so I started seeing these visuals that my guides were showing me. And this might just be like duh to everyone, but they were showing me that we're literally electric, that our neurotransmitters, our nervous system is all electric. So what's happening to me is happening in my brain and my spine, which I also think is super magic, because I'm 33 years old, just like Jesus, just like transformation, 33, the number of transformation, but also we have 33 vertebrae in our spine, and what's happening to me has to do with my spinal fluid in my third eye. So it's all like very woo and connected. But where my electricity was, where my vibration was in a place of wound. I don't even want to say wound like it's bad or something that I did wrong, because it's not. But it has to be a certain environment for parasites to thrive. And I think parasites also carry deep memory of our woundings. And when I went on some pretty harsh anti-parasite medicine last month, and I could literally feel the parasites dying, and I could see them coming out of me. And as they were dying, memories were coming up. And I was like, oh shit, each parasite is like a memory I'm holding on to. And we hold on to memory for a sense of connection a lot of times. And a lot of people I've done readings for say, Lacey, I don't know what happened in my childhood. I have no memory of my childhood. And part of having no memory is you don't want to be connected to what happened, right? I'm not saying that's everyone, but a lot of people I've worked with, it's come up like they didn't want to be connected, or they already felt so disconnected from their parents that they must just like shut off their memory. That's one way of coping. Another way of coping is holding on to every memory for a sense of connection. Like, I don't have my family. I don't feel connected to them. So I try to like remember each of them. And I hold their memories in my body. And it just so happens that the memories are dark, are trauma. But I don't want to release that darkness or to release that trauma, because then it would be a void. And I prefer holding on to some of those memories than just being without. Does that make sense? Thank you guys for being so patient with me. I don't know. Let me know how you're feeling. The saying for my religious days just popped up. We are not at war with weapons, but principles and powers. Yeah. I know a lot of my friends get annoyed with me when I'm like, war, and they're like, you're manifesting the war by talking about the war. And that might be true, but I just feel like since I was a baby, my guide showed me that we would be in a spiritual war. And I don't see war as just negative. War before liberation comes war, right? And I think we're on a path of remembering, and we're on a path of remembering, and we're on a path of seeking our liberation. And sometimes we have to fight to get free. And that doesn't mean we have to kill each other or harm another or harm ourselves or allow ourselves to be harmed. I'm so slow at typing and long-winded and stoned. Well, I love what you've been saying. Relatable. Hi, Marissa. So glad you're here. Marissa, so some of you, I don't know who it was, but well, it's been quite a few of you, have sent me messages asking if you can, like, I don't know, I'm sorry, Marissa, if you didn't, but I think so, and I've been getting a lot of DMs of people saying, can I offer you healing? Can I get your consent of doing like psychic work on you? Here's my stance with all of that, with love spells, with healing people from afar, and consent. You don't need my consent. You need my consent for a lot of things in my life, and I'm really, part of being sick is like, connecting to boundaries. But I'll use the example of a love spell. People are like, love spells are so bad, so disrespectful, you're not getting their consent. No, that person has power. That person has a higher self. When we do a sort of love spell is a weird example, but I just feel like people talk about it a lot. When we do a love spell, it's like an energetic knock on the door. And sometimes we can talk to each other easier on higher dimensions, where if you were to just knock on that person's door, they might not really get a sense. They might be freaked out. They might not get a sense of your energy. You can energetically introduce yourself to people on a higher dimension, and then their higher self, their energy cords, have the option to consent or not to consent. Not every love spell works, and that's because the other person might not want to engage in that, or their higher self might not want to engage in that. Every spirit has autonomy. So if you are sending me healing, you don't have to get my permission. If it's in alignment, it will come to me. And that's why we don't have to ever be scared of people putting spells or hexes on us. Not that we don't have to energetically protect. For sure we do. And not that spells don't happen and spells aren't real. But sometimes our higher self will be like, we agree, you're fucking up a little. We've agreed. Your guides, your team, your higher self agreed. You are hitting the timeline of having a little hex, having a little curse. And that's just to like wake up, learn, get on a different timeline. Does that make sense? Ramble on. I love you guys. For reals. I resonate with that. Rhonda says, my hunch about neurodivergence autism is that it's mostly an upgrade. I heard someone say that recently. It's like a new software running on old hardware. Cool. Super cool. I have a friend who suddenly has a child in her life who has it. It has a lot of anger around it. And I don't know how to support that right now. But I also think like sugar is not good. Okay, I want to say a magic thing that's really come up. So when I was killing the parasites, they wanted to stay alive. And part of staying alive is they would show me a dark trauma. And I say show me like almost like right before, like as the parasite was dying, it would hijack my consciousness, especially around the full moon. And it's scientific proof that the full moon is when parasites procreate and are their most powerful. And I'm wondering if you know how when we all go crazy at the full moon, like if a lot of it is the parasites. So the parasite would sort of grab consciousness and it would make me fetishize my own trauma in a really weird, sick way. And this might not be appropriate to be saying on Patreon, but I think a lot of healing is where can you put your mind and what environment can you put your mind and your body so that you can get in the right electric vibration. When I say right, the vibration in alignment to heal. And I found myself for a few weeks like in a very fucked up, dark state. And like getting horny and getting turned on by my own abuse in a way I have never felt before. And I don't even just mean in like a tongue-in-cheek way where, you know, like I'm sure you've heard people, and I think we've talked about it on Horpon, people being like turned on by rape fantasies. And if we've been raped, a lot of us have rape fantasies because we heal through our wound. Okay, we have to like so deeply immerse and connect and identify with our wound. So many people are like, don't identify with sickness, don't identify with your wound, but like that is the healing. First you have to like identify with it, and then transmute it. You don't get to ignore it and heal it or think it's separate than you. Like that's what I was doing. I was like, I'm not going to identify with this, and I was keeping it very far away when it was inside me. But I was like really getting off to my abuse in a very sick way. And when I say sick, I just mean it disturbed me. Probably if I said it out loud, because you're not me, it wouldn't be as disturbing. But I didn't want to attract anyone being nice to me. I wanted to attract violence towards myself, but not in a way that I was like suicidal or self-harming. It was really just an imagination thing that I quickly realized was the parasite, because I would sense this, I would feel it, I would see its darkness, and then I would see the parasite come out of me hours later, or sometimes a day or two later. And this is so gross and so DMI. And I was like really talking to Rosie about it, and she was, you know, acknowledging that the parasites themselves hold a consciousness, but deeper than that, they hold the memory. And they hold the memory in a sense of those who invoked the abuse. And the biggest thing I've learned, one of the biggest things I've learned so far is Rosie's like, you have to be very conscious of where your mind goes right now, because every time a parasite comes out, it leaves a hole. And whenever we're detoxing or we break up with someone or we leave a job, that creates a hole, either in our body or our energy field. And every time there's a hole, something's going to come fill up that hole naturally, organically. And if we're used to trauma, if we're used to the wounding, we'll subconsciously fill the hole with more parasites or more poison or more trauma. And it's not because there's something wrong with us. It's because we want to be whole. We don't want to be fractured or severed. We want to be whole, so we're constantly filling the void, the holes. And the parasite's goal is to survive in your body. So the parasites were, in a sense, telling me to keep filling it up with trauma. And in a sense, I felt like I could really tap into the consciousness of those who abused me in a way I never saw before. So when Rosie was like, Lacey, you have to consciously choose what you're putting in your holes. Sorry, so gross. And so then I started being much softer with myself and reading, instead of masturbating about anything fucked up. I was allowing myself to read to my childhood self. So I'm trying to teach myself to like read, because for months I couldn't read because one of my eyes. And so I got books about octopus and jellyfish. And I was like, I'm going to fill these holes with knowledge of the sea. I started tapping more into the energy of the universe is rigged for me to fill that hole. I started tapping into like softer movies and energies and like laughter in a new way. And every day now when I wake up, I know that I'm losing a lot right now. And part of getting healthy is loss. Is loss. Part of getting healthy is so much fucking loss and abandonment. And that's why we stay in fucked up situations. It's why we don't cut off certain family members even when they hurt us, because we've already been through so much. How can we fucking handle more loss? But my body is like, we're losing some of the parasites right now. And in a sense, the parasites aren't just this evil external entity. They're protection. It's like I have a kinship to part of my darkness through them. But I do think it represents like the underworld. And mold is huge. I'm about to start releasing some of the mold from my body. There's going to be a lot more talk about mold sicknesses and fungal infections. And I'm going to do a mold episode where I really tap into the magic and the mystery and the mythology and the poison of mold. Interesting about the iron in the blood. I grew up in a steel town, and my grandfather worked in the steel mills when he was alive. Yeah. I just remember the men in my family welding, and I wanted to learn so bad how to weld because that's how they connected to each other, and they wouldn't let me weld. And I know part of my healing is doing magic around steel. You know more about human design than me. Tell us, Ian. You told us about the karmic and almost darkness associated with metal working because I needed to hear it. It's confirmation for me. Thank you. Thank you, Corey. Hi, Blitzwolf. Yeah, the love spell thing is big for me. Don't feel bad about making love spells. That's you're not going to torment someone with your love spell. You know what I mean? If they're tormented, it's because they're feeling that torment. Everything is like a hologram, the external or internal, external. So if they're feeling torment, that's something they're also experiencing right now. But I feel like it's a compliment. It's like it's like a bluebird coming to your window singing a song, or it can show up in a lot of ways, but it's like someone telling you you're hot or beautiful or amazing. I think it only has good places to go, and if it doesn't, your guides will protect you. Yeah, the whole thing is so big for me. I really wish I would have started this live talking about the whole, but people had to listen to me jabber about my current experience first. Oh yeah, holes in our skull. Another way our thoughts can create and shift our reality, but also be penetrated by the influence of others. Yeah, did you know that there's a lot of people who were diagnosed with a hole in their brain, and surgery happened and they realized that that hole was an actual worm, a parasite? So sometimes you might feel like you have a void or a hole, but it's literally a parasite, like a parasitic person sucking from you, or somewhere where we're giving our power away. Whenever parasites show up, for me, it's a message that I'm giving my power away at some aspect of my life. This is really awesome, Marissa. Thank you for saying that. I feel a little like, like vulnerability sickness right now of how I shared, like how I was turned on by my own abuse. I feel weird about that right now. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't say it like publicly on YouTube. Ugh. But wow. Yeah. We have organic holes, don't we? I know there's more I want to think. Like, I feel like you're really getting at something, Marissa, that I can't totally touch on yet. But this is really cool. If you guys have any more thoughts about holes, message me, because I want to do a whole episode also. Eels! The Morgan as an Eel. I got an eel book. I haven't read it yet, though. I don't know what it's called, but it has a very cool cover with eels on it. But so magic, right? Aliens of the sea. The heretic investigator is supposed to pop in and out of situations to change personal paradigms while also mixing up the status quo of the situation they've found themselves in. Dope. Resonates. Feel it. Thank you. There has been these moments where I'm like, is it bad to be talking about abuse in a podcast? Is it bad to be talking about abuse in Patreon? Am I just telling this old story? But to be honest, the story isn't old yet to me. It's still living inside me. And there's still so much of my abuse and the trauma I've experienced that I haven't told anyone yet. And there's still so much of it that I haven't yet confronted. And I just think there's this thing of like, if you're abused as a child at 20, you're supposed to be fine. And I'm not fine at 33. I'm magic. I'm strong. I'm protected in ways. But I'm not just fine. And I don't think any of us are right now. But that doesn't mean that we're not evolving. It doesn't mean that we're not finding our liberation through it. Savage Love Podcast this week had a woman who experienced the exact same thing, being turned on by trauma this week too. It's really normal. That's good. Glad to hear it. Also glad I didn't share with you the exact details because it was fucked. But it did give me this sense of being able to step into the inner, not that I wasn't like getting off on being the perpetrator, but it made me like see the perpetrator more different, in a different light. And no one's just an enemy or a perpetrator, right? They're coming with their own wounds and abuse. You did a reading for me a while ago and said the dark goddess ran. The dark goddess ran came through. I bought a book about the ocean. Oh, I remember this reading. That's another one of my issues is I've done thousands and thousands of readings. And if you tell me like a sentence from a reading, I can remember exactly where I was sitting, what was happening, what we talked about. Like, Marissa, I know exactly where I was sitting. I was up in the mountains on this wood floor, and I remember talking to you about Ran and the ocean. And I remember you were in a studio, right? Like, you were in this art studio. You were feeling good about being in this new place. That's insane. Like, I shouldn't even with what has been going on with me, I can still remember every reading. And I don't just remember it from here, right? I remember it through feeling, which means that I'm still on that frequency. That means I'm still there on that timeline giving you that reading right now, which means I'm still on the timeline of every reading I've given and every trial, turmoil I've experienced. And that's a gift, but also it's a curse because I don't let anything go. And it's part of like why my body holds on, you know? It's this not letting go. And I don't, yeah. What do you guys think about that? Does that make sense? Well, I don't have to keep you guys all night. I think there was other things I was excited to talk about. Well, first, I'm going to leave you with a wild, weird confession. I got sick in around December and I was just in sweatpants the whole, and you guys can feel free to ask any questions right now or any thoughts or feelings. I wanted to come back strong with a bang, and I think this was just some wild rambles, but it's okay. So my confession is I spent the last 6 months in sweatpants and losing chunks of my hair and mostly talking to the spirits around me. And at a certain point, I was like, a girl needs to fuck. You know what I mean? I just need to fuck. And a lot of my autonomy was taken away and I wasn't allowed to drive. And I'm not good with not being allowed to do things. And so my inner teenager came out and I stole my own car when no one was looking. And I drove my car 3 hours up a mountain to get some tail. To have sex with this person that he calls me every full moon and I don't know. I feel like this is a little crazy to say. But wild witch here. So he calls me every full moon to hook up, and I don't know this person very well, and I've never been in this sort of exchange, and we don't really know each other as people, but we kind of slammed into space and met each other and then have wild sex that feels like healing, and it feels like pastime, like karmic, past life kind of sex. But he doesn't know I have a podcast. I've talked about him on podcasts because he's like this random mountain woodsman who I just don't know, but I know his dick. And so I'm like, I'm getting some dick. I told him I was sick, but I don't think he gets it, And he literally he's really off the grid in this cabin. Nobody knows, even nobody I'm friends with that I knew of even knew that mountain town existed. It's not very common. And I drove to him and I didn't realize I was going 65 and a 35. Oops. Wild witch on the loose. And so shockingly I get pulled over and the cop lets me know right away that there's a warrant for my arrest. Magician of chaos over here. And I'm like, a warrant for my arrest? And they were like, yeah, you failed to appear in court. And I totally forgot that I had a very minor traffic ticket that I was supposed to just prove I had car insurance, and I did have car insurance. But I forgot to go to court because I was in the hospital in LA. So when you don't go to court, you get a warrant for your arrest. And so the cop is like, yeah, there's a warrant for your arrest and it's snowing. I'm in the mountains. I shouldn't have been driving. I'm sick. And I'm like, you can't arrest me. I'm sick. He's like, you're sick? What are you doing in a dress in the mountains, in the snow? And like, my goal has been trying to prove to this man, and this comes from a very teenage wounded self, but my goal is to prove to this man that I'm like chill, that I'm not chaotic. And they're like, so the cop was like, if there's a warrant for your arrest, there's nothing I can do. Like you're going to jail tonight, and you should call your friend that you're coming here to see so he can get your car so it's not towed. And this person is very like atypical, very like rigid, very masculine, owns like a company in the mountains, very like, so different than me. And I was like, oh my God, I can't call this person and tell him to come get my car because I'm getting arrested. And the cop's like, well, I have to call for backup. So the cop calls backup and 4 cop cars show up. And luckily, I made a stop at the witch store. Before I ever do any sort of sex magic, I make a stop at the witch store. So I had mugwort in my car, and I had powders, and I use these powders in a spell, and they're like incense powders made by witches. So some it's like for passion, lust, money, whatever, protection. So I did all the things you should never do when you're pulled over, but my brain wasn't totally there, and I lit the mugwort. So I'm like, oh, in the car while the cops are doing whatever. But luckily it was like snowing, and my windows were already foggy, and it was night. So I don't know if they like totally saw the smoke. And I'm like talking to my guides, and then I'm like doing the powder. And they came back and said I was going to jail, and that they just had to like get me booked into the system or something. They're like, so just wait. And I was like, okay, but I'm like sick. And I remembered I have a doctor's note in my car. So I'm like looking for the doctor's note. But in that moment, I hadn't been feeling magic. Like I just hadn't been feeling a lot of magic in my life. I hadn't been feeling a lot of anything. It's the first time I felt a lot of numbness. And then I saw multiple timelines glitching in front of me. And literally I saw this flash of light and this like glitch of a timeline of me going to jail. I saw a glitch of a timeline of me falling off the mountain. I saw a glitch of a timeline of me getting to his house safely. I saw a timeline of me being home. And then I like fell into my root, into my sacral, and I could feel my body opening up. And each timeline holds a different feeling in our different chakras. And getting to his house safely was like my root and sacral. And I like went into that feeling. And there was this inner critic who came in and said, you can't jump timelines. The cops already said you're going to jail. You didn't go to court. You fuck up everything. You're so chaotic, like the matrixy critic voices. But I kept just tuning into that fucking sacral, and I was like, and I didn't say I'm not getting arrested. I said I'm safe. I'm in his cabin. The universe is rigged in my favor right now. I'm abundant. Not only do I not have to go to jail, I do not have to give these cops money. I am protected in this situation. And I'm sorry if the cops is like a bad example of jumping timelines, because let's be very clear, I am a 5'2" white woman. That is an immense amount of privilege when I get pulled over, an immense amount. Always. So there's a huge level of privilege in this jumping timeline story. But for me, it was the first time that I saw the different timelines in a long time. Like I forgot the way that I could see them glitch. And when they glitched, I forgot the way I could feel it in different parts of my body. And the police, well, first I got out of the car to show them that I had a doctor's note. They're probably like, this woman is nuts. And they're like, get back in the car. And like, I don't know if he actually reached for his gun, but they reached for something, and they like charged towards me, and they're like, do not get out of your car. And I was like, oh yeah, sorry. Again, my privilege. And they were like, okay, we can't book you in the system because we're missing a number. You have to have like this you have to have 2 verification numbers or something, and we're missing a number. So so you're good to go, but we're gonna escort you to this person's house. So like my whole goal is to like prove to this person that I'm like chill, and then I like show up to his house with the car that I've stolen and escorted by cops. And not stolen, it's my car. It's just, you know, my family, like my friends don't want me driving for my own good and would have been very upset if they knew. But I was very thankful for that moment just to see the timelines. And then I went and had sex with him, and it almost felt like we got to use each other's body to like anchor a new timeline. And it was on the last full moon. And since then, it was just like a little reminder, a little lesson of, oh, I can jump timelines. That doesn't mean I always go to the greatest timeline, and it doesn't mean my ass is always saved, because that was like a stupid situation. But I don't know. I had to share that for you guys. But I guess since we're talking about sex and I don't really know that person. Oh, I have to tell you the biggest, craziest part. So I'm like there having sex with him. And our sex is usually very like loving, not loving, because like we don't really know each other or have a connection, but it's like sensual. It feels safe to me. And that night he was very rough. And rough in a way that was scary to me. And I have nerve pain right now. Do you guys know about nerve pain? Nerve pain is unlike anything I've experienced. I don't have it right now in this moment, but I've experienced it in the last few months. And that shit is insane. It's so insane. So I was kind of recovering from my nerves being really thrown off and my nervous system being thrown off. And kind of without consent, he like threw me down and was like spanking a lot. And I think for him, it meant to be like hot spanking, and I could see the passion behind it. But for me, it just felt like I was being hit over and over and over. And I could feel myself like crawling into myself and being like hit a lot. And like, it was, my nerves are so sensitive already. And I was like, oh no, I just came here to like find reprieve. And it was a message of like, even when we're like coming to find reprieve, there's always moments where our power we can choose to give our power away. There's always moments that our wounds will reflect in the external reality. And my guides were like, so you're going to let him just keep fucking hitting you when you're hurt? And I finally got him like off me, and I was like, you can't hit me because I've been sick, which is not that fair to him, because I don't have like a relationship with him where I tell him about me. It's very just sex. And I like made him pinky promise that he wasn't going to like spank me anymore. And he pinky promised, and I turned around and he spanked me. I felt so angry, but it was a cool opportunity, because when I was younger and had little violations, I couldn't do anything about them, you know? And I think we'll manifest those violations until we can our power. So after he spanked, and he was like, I don't think he, like, reading his energy, I don't think he was trying to cause harm, but that isn't an excuse, because he, I want to see what you're saying, huh? Kudos on recognizing that intrusive thought attempting to convince you not to do magic while waiting on the cops wasn't your own. Oh, thank you, huh? So I like took my power back by sort of telling him not to fuck with me, Then I asked him if I could put a spell on him. And he said, yeah. And I took those powders and I put it, I'm just like telling you all the craziest shit tonight, no filter. Well, I put the powders on him and he consented to the spell. And he didn't even ask what it was. So perfect. And I put the powders over him. And it was more of a spell of protection to me, but also a binding of him. Now, I couldn't just leave because it was snowing. I was on the top of the mountain. I had already, shouldn't have been driving, so I had to stay there. But I needed to bind him, and he consented. And he was still, wearing a condom. And after I put the spell on him, and he did it naked and consenting, and I wasn't trying to hurt him. But in that moment, something happened, and I, don't even know what happened. But the condom, came back and snapped him, snapped his dick, and it wasn't me. And he fell to the ground. And I wasn't even thinking about the spell. I was like, oh my God, are you okay now? What is happening tonight? This full moon is crazy. And he was like, ah, and he was literally almost crying and screaming. And I've never seen him so exuberant. And I'm smiling about it now, but at the time I was I just went into caretaker mode, and I was rubbing his back, and I just didn't know what was happening. And then he looked up and he was like, is this the spell? Is this the spell? And then I was like, oh, it was the spell. Because it kept him from having sex with me the rest of the night because his dick hurt. I mean, not that I wouldn't have had my own authority there. I feel like this all sounds really fucked up. But I consented to this relationship being a little fucked up. But long story short, are you guys still with me? Long story short, which is not short, I came home that night and I was like, yeah, when I'm sick, what the hell am I doing having sex with this random man? But I see that the chaos was very healing for me, and that I had to experience some of that chaos. And it was the full moon. It was eclipse season. But I was sitting with my friend Bree, and we were watching a girly show, and she's like, everyone has that friend who's a detective. And I was like, I don't have a detective friend. And then I realized, I don't know this person. I know on an energetic level, I don't think his soul was bad. And I think karmically, we were supposed to come together and do weird sex magic in the forest. But I was like, oh, I don't know him. I don't know his last name. I don't, he could be married for all I know. He says he's not. What do I know? And so she researched him really fast. And in 5 minutes, she had his last name, all the land he's ever purchased. And we go to his old Facebook, and it's him with this partner, his ex-partner. And he did tell me he had this ex-partner, and I click, Bree clicks on it, and it says me and his ex-partner have all these mutual friends, specifically mutual friends of the people I was in Africa with, in West Africa and Ghana. And I was like, that is so fucking weird. This random man in the mountains, ex-partner is friends with the people I was in West Africa with. And one of those people, well, she didn't go to West Africa with me, but one of those people is my good friend Liz. And Liz and I were yoga teachers together many timelines ago, 10 years ago. And I just have always had this deep love for Liz. She's an ex-drug addict. Her and I did not fit into the yoga studio, and we became fast, strong friends. But I realized that I've been really disconnected from Liz, and I haven't kept up with her. I have no idea how she's doing. And I'm seeing all these pictures online of Liz, who is from the East Coast, and from what I knew, still lived on the East Coast, and this random recluse mountain man who lives in a cabin in Colorado, and he's not from here either. And there's pictures of one of my good friends and him together throughout the years. And I'm like, what? So that the universe pushed me to call Liz, because I wanted to know how she knew this mountain man, and just to say hi. And I called Liz right after all that happened. And before I could say anything, she's like, Lacey, I'm so sorry I haven't been in touch. Like, I thought about you. We lost track during COVID. She's like, I don't even know how you are. Like, I know you started your podcast, but then your Instagram was gone. I haven't, like, and she's like, but the truth is, like, I haven't been in touch because I got extremely sick. And I was like, what, Liz? You got sick? And she's like, yeah, I woke up one day and my eyesight was gone. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, my eyesight was gone. And then I couldn't walk. And I just could not believe what I was hearing because that's what I was experiencing. And I wasn't super public about it. And she's like, I moved back to Denver because I got Lyme disease, Lacey. And I was like, what? You have Lyme disease? And we didn't even talk about the random man in the mountains because she started the conversation leading with how she had Lyme disease and it made her lose her eyesight. And I don't know anyone personally who's lost their eyesight from it. And she got it back. And she's like, Lacey, I figured out how to heal Lyme. Like, I figured it out in my body. And when I tell her about this mountain man, she's like, yeah, I know him. I know him well. And she likes him and loves him and, like, is a part of her friend group. And she was like, but you have to come here right now. So I go to her house and she was like, I'm here for you. And I know how to heal this. So I'm blabbing about all of this to say, I thought I was just fucking this random mountain man to, like, get out sexual tension and doing sex magic with him, which led me to an old amazing friend who has this exact same disease I have, who's healed it for herself. And I'm like, if that's not magic, like, what is magic? And so it was just a good reminder and a good reflection that we're all, like, when we come into contact with someone, it's for a magic purpose. It's for the healing. It's for everyone is our teacher. How are you guys feeling? Was that the weirdest story ever? Talk to me and then we'll go. Tell me how you're feeling. I am going to end up deleting this live for sure. I am going to go to bed tonight and be like, God, why did you say that? Why did you say that? Oh, thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much. So much love to you, Leslie. Jelly drops. I would experience jelly drops. I don't know if you're still here, but I'm glad some of it was relatable. Good night, Saw. Okay, I'm gonna go, guys. I love you. What did she say about how to heal the Lyme? Well, I don't want to say it out loud. The thing with Lyme is it is different for every person. But for me, the healing came just by, like, remembering I had Liz as a friend. And Liz represents such a cool transformation in my life. And it last full moon, I was in this state of fear of that everyone's gonna forget about me and I'm gonna be all alone. And it was just this reminder that you can be having sex with a fuck boy who's giving you spankings that you didn't ask for. But even that can lead to magic, you know? I don't know if that makes sense, but so the healing for me came in when Liz was like, Lacey, if you need someone to take you to get groceries, I'll take you to get groceries. If Bree's too tired to take you to the fucking doctor all the time, I'll take you to the doctor. Liz knows how debilitating she was. So and she's just, like, beautiful and cool. But, like, I fell in love with Liz because I saw her darkness so clearly and, like, her family dynamic. and how she rose above it in such a strong way. So that's where the healing is for me. Thank you, Abby. I'm like, thank you for that external validation about my crazy ass stories. I need it. So much love to you, Jordan. Jordans have always been so significant in my life. I love Jordans. I think that name carries a lot of magic. Thank you, Marissa, for being here and all of your insight. Truly, like all of you guys for being here and your insight. So much love to you. Oh yeah. Well, it was only one cop car that followed, luckily. And yeah, I guess I shouldn't be like laughing about doing 65 and a 35. That's horrendous and I don't recommend it. Okay, thank you guys so much. I'll pull a card to say goodbye. 2 came out. Like, can you read any of that? Love, friendship. That is the healing in my magic right now. As corny as it is, I would be dead without my friends and without you guys. And I'm sending you all love. Bye.